On the refrigerator in Carol Brenner's kitchen, there's a single photograph. A wedding shot, slightly faded, curled at the corners. She's smiling, holding a bouquet of pale yellow tulips. Her white dress hugs her full figure like it was stitched from a dream. Standing next to her is a tall, slim man in a dark blue suit. His hand rests on hers. He isn't smiling. People say he looked like a model, Carol told me. I thought he looked like a beginning. They had been married for exactly 7 days when he vanished. Not in a metaphorical sense. Jason, the man in the photograph, physically disappeared. No note, no call. His phone was dead. His keys were gone. His toothbrush was still in the holder. The police labeled it a voluntary disappearance. He probably needed space, they told her. But the story doesn't end there. Because the more Carol searched for answers, the more the facts refused to add up. She thought he was her husband, but there was no marriage license on file. She thought he had a job, but his social security number didn't exist. She thought she knew his face, but on half the wedding photos, his features are too blurred to make out clearly. What happened to Jason Lang? Or better yet, who was Jason Lang? Carol met Jason online on a forum dedicated to classic cinema. They bonded over a shared love of Hitchcock and mint tea. She was 41, a school librarian who hadn't been on a date in 6 years. He said he was 39, a freelance developer who worked remotely and hated social media. Their first video call was grainy. He said he didn't like being on camera. She didn't mind. I felt like he saw me, she told me. Not just my body, me. 3 months later, he moved in. Her friends were skeptical. He's too pretty, one whispered, too polished. Jason was lean, quiet, pale, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that shifted just left of yours when he spoke. He always wore long sleeves, even in summer. At the grocery store, he lingered by the self-checkout. When Carol introduced him to a coworker at the farmer's market, he smiled once, then walked away mid-sentence. Still, Carol was happy, happier than she could remember. He cooked for her. He called her Sunbeam. He said he'd never met someone so honest, so rooted. When he proposed, it wasn't with a ring, but with a folded note that read, "Let's stay." They had a quiet backyard ceremony. No family, no photographer, just 2 witnesses from Carol's yoga class. She said it felt right. And then, one morning, she woke up and his side of the bed was empty, and stayed empty. At first, Carol assumed he'd gone for a walk. Jason liked to clear his head before breakfast, he said. But by noon, when he hadn't returned, the worry started to seep in. By dinner, panic had bloomed. She called his phone. It rang once, then straight to voicemail. His wallet was still on the dresser. His favorite mug sat by the sink, half full of tea, still faintly warm when she found it. Only his keys were gone, and the front door, she noticed, had been locked from the inside. Carol filed a missing person report. The officer who took her statement looked unconvinced. Any history of mental illness? Relationship issues? No, Carol said. We're newlyweds. The police ran his name. No warrants, no recent ID renewals. His driver's license checked out, sort of. Issued 2 years ago, no prior record. When they pulled surveillance footage from the neighborhood, all they saw was Jason walking down the street at 4:12 a.m., hoodie pulled up, head down. And then, nothing. Carol tried to retrace everything, his habits, his contacts, any trace of a trail. But there was almost nothing. No tax returns, no medical records, no job history she could verify. Jason Lang, the man she married, barely existed on paper. When she contacted the county clerk's office to request a copy of their marriage certificate, the clerk paused. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said gently. "We have no record of any such marriage." Carol stared at the phone long after the clerk hung up. Her hands trembled. She checked the certificate in her drawer, the one Jason had printed and handed her the morning after their wedding. It looked official, stamped, signed. But now in the cold kitchen light, the font seemed off, the paper too smooth, no watermark. She drove to the photographer's studio the next day, the one who'd shot a few quick portraits after the ceremony. The receptionist furrowed her brow. "We actually only photographed you, Miss Brenner. You said your husband didn't like pictures." "That's not possible," Carol whispered. "He was right there. He held my hand." They checked the files, photo after photo. Carol in her dress, smiling towards someone out of frame. In one image, Jason's shoulder is visible, just a blur. In another, his face is turned, motion blurred to a smear. And in the final shot, he's simply not there. "I don't understand," Carol murmured. "He was real. We kissed. We slept in the same bed. I have memories." She called her mother, desperate for grounding. "Sweetheart," her mother said carefully, "you told me about him, of course, but I never saw him in person. I thought maybe he was shy." The walls of memory began to crack. Friends admitted they never met Jason face to face, just heard stories. No texts, no photos, no social media. And then the package arrived, wrapped in brown paper. No return address. Inside, a flash drive, one video file, labeled only "Our Day." Carol hesitated for hours before plugging the drive into her laptop. Her palms were clammy. The air in the room felt thick, like waiting for a storm to break. The file opened with a flicker of static, then clarity. It was her, in her wedding dress, sitting at the small garden table behind the house, laughing, holding a glass of champagne. Across from her, just barely out of full frame, sat a man. Tall, pale hands, a familiar wristwatch. Jason. His voice came through clearly, low and intimate. "You look like the sun itself today." She saw herself blush, heard her giggle, a sound she no longer recognized. He leaned forward, touching her cheek, and said, "You'll remember when it matters." Then the screen went black. Carol stared at her reflection in the dark monitor. Her pulse roared in her ears. She replayed the footage, paused it, zoomed in on his face, but the sunlight obscured his features, just a silhouette. The metadata wiped clean. No timestamp, no camera info, just static where answers should be. She called the police again, showed them the footage. They logged it as unverified material. At night, she replayed the video over and over. She knew those movements, that voice, that presence. And yet, it was as if he never quite touched the world. A man who left no footprint, no breath on a window pane, no heat in the bed. And worst of all, she couldn't prove any of it had ever happened. Carol never got another package. No phone call, no explanation, just the video, like a ghost saying goodbye. Weeks passed. She stopped trying to convince others, stopped asking officials to look again, stopped bringing up Jason's name at the library where she returned to work. She knew the way people looked at her, with sympathy at best, with doubt mostly. But every now and then, someone would find her in a quiet corner and whisper, "Something like that happened to my cousin." Or, "I dated a guy once, he vanished the same way." And always it ended with, "But no one believed her either." Online, Carol discovered a small network, women with eerily similar stories. Different names, different faces, but the same haunting patterns. A charming man, few traces, a blur in the photos, a love that felt too sharp to be fake until it was gone. No one knew his real name. Some called him the Mirage, others the Archivist. One woman swore he had been hired by a neuroscience research firm. Another insisted he was part of an empathy study that went off the rails. Most didn't care anymore. They just wanted to feel sane again. Carol keeps the wedding photo on her fridge, but now it's cut in half. Just her, standing alone, smiling. On the back, in tiny handwriting, a line she didn't write. "For the version of me that loved you most. Jay." And every night at 10:42 p.m., the porch light flickers once, as if someone remembers.